Not all people are what they appear to be. This is something that history has proved time and time again, especially when it comes to serial killers. Generally, the profiles of these brutal criminals are full of contradictions, and one of the most common is their occupation. Some seem to have perfectly normal jobs, professions useful to society like insurance salesmen, cab drivers, or even dentists. Precisely for this reason, today you are going to know 7 chilling stories of some monstrous men who murdered their patients even though their profession didn't give them away. The events you're about to hear changed the history of several cities around the world and made many people develop a deep fear of dentists. However, if you're brave enough to face these chilling incidents, you'd better get comfortable and get ready to discover the cases of the 7 most chilling killer dentists in history. 7 creepiest killer dentists in history. Number 7. We'll start this list with the abominable and the grotesque. Glennon Engelman was one of the most prestigious and ruthless dentists ever recorded in history. His existence meant big business for many people, although he quickly proved himself to be an unscrupulous and highly impulsive man. Glennon had his own dental practice and seemed to prosper at ease. Everything in his life was good until lust and love crossed his path. Throughout his life, he had several romantic partners who, upon breaking with Glennon and establishing a relationship with other men, were quickly tainted by some homicide. During his many affairs and marriages, it's estimated that he murdered more than 5 people. Each of them was killed in the same manner, shot in the head in a one-witness location. The most curious thing is that each of their ex-partners managed to collect some life insurance or an inheritance thanks to the homicide. For decades, the police were on the trail of this respected dentist. They never managed to tie the threads together to incriminate him. Glennon always had an alibi and a way to get out of trouble, at least until his late wife agreed to cooperate with the police for fear of becoming the next victim. Thanks to this and a hidden microphone, the police were able to get Glennon to confess to each of his murders, and he was imprisoned for it until he died in 1999. Of course, this case was highly emblematic, but we're just getting started. The next murderer on the list also holds many bloody secrets that you should definitely know about. Number 6. Charles Adelson may be an unfamiliar name, but you may be surprised to learn that he was arrested in April of this year for a case that has fed many tabloids in the United States. This beloved and popular dentist kept a family plot full of violence and death, especially after 2014 when his brother-in-law, Dan Merkel, a law professor at Florida State University, was murdered. Of course, his happiness had a motive. According to investigations, Charles had hired a pair of hitmen to assassinate Merkel to force a divorce from his sister Wendy. It's estimated that Charles paid close to $100,000 to put an end to his unwanted brother-in-law. Although most chillingly, the dentist demanded a molar from the victim as proof that the job had been successfully completed. Although Charles managed to evade the charges against him for more than 8 years, he was finally sentenced to 19 years in prison after pleading guilty to the murder of his brother-in-law. Naturally, Charles isn't the only dentist to find himself embroiled in such a decision. In fact, the following case will show us that the world is a dangerous place and that even those who seem harmless can be real monsters. Number 5. Our next story takes us to Pennsylvania in the United States, specifically to the office of the dentist and hunter Larry Rudolph, a happily married man who decided to take a trip to Zambia with his wife in 2016, but returned without her. There's no catch in this sentence. Larry returned to the United States straight to collect $5 million from his wife's life insurance after she was accidentally killed during a hunting trip. The curious thing is that this dentist decided to cremate her body in Africa in order to avoid any investigation or autopsy. Subsequent investigations tried to clarify the facts but had little success. The official version presents Larry as a man who was in his cabin when he heard a gunshot that made him come out. Then, a short distance away, he saw his wounded wife, covered in blood from a shotgun blast she had inflicted on herself. Minutes later, she died. Family and friends of Bianca, Larry's wife, claimed that the dentist was having an affair with another woman and was desperate to get the money he needed to start a new life. Unfortunately, investigators were unable to build a solid case against the dentist, and he remains at large without a conviction. As you have noticed, his case is still full of surprises that may be solved in the future, but unlike Larry, an ex-murderer on the list has such a guilty profile that you will be able to sentence him yourself. Number 4. It's time to talk about Gilberto Nunes, a dentist who lived a normal life in the suburbs of Kingstown, New York, and provided excellent service to the county's patients. However, behind a friendly dentist who made children laugh, there was a possessive man obsessed with Linda Coleman, a beautiful woman married to one of the patients Gilberto himself saw every month. The two had an affair behind Thomas Coleman's back, and the loss of the encounters quickly became a necessity. Unfortunately for the dentist, Linda was unwilling to sacrifice her marriage and left him. For several years, Gilberto stalked Linda. His methods slowly increased in intensity. Every day he seemed more desperate, and everything seemed to indicate that this obsession led him to murder Thomas Coleman in a dental office by poisoning him with midazolam, a powerful sedative that fulminated the victim. Gilberto managed to carry the corpse to the car and created enough confusion so that no one associated him with the murder. However, in 2015, the state prosecutor's office managed to formally charge him with second-degree murder. There was no way to prove that Gilberto Nunes had given the poison to his victim. He was, however, convicted in other court proceedings of forgery, perjury, and insurance fraud. The sentence was 7 years, although he was released early after 19 months. It seems that dentists don't fare too well in love, although it's possible that no case is as chilling as the next on our list. Number 3. James Ryan is a name that has become popular in the U.S. town of Maryland for several months in 2022, after he was accused of supplying anesthetic and addictive solutions to his partner, Sarah Harris, a 25-year-old woman. Their relationship began because of James' profession. Sarah went to his office, and from that moment on, the 48-year-old dentist began to establish a relationship that led to Sarah Harris' death. According to the various prosecution evidence, the dentist had induced her into a severe addiction to multiple dangerous substances that were in James' possession. After a couple of months under this dynamic, Sarah began to have strong disorders that were evidenced in the telephone messaging she maintained with James. Like Sarah, the dentist was also addicted to these substances, although he was able to control the doses more precisely due to his age and weight. Sadly, his partner fell victim to his experiments and died of a powerful overdose. The dentist was charged with second-degree murder because of his knowledge of the substances he was administering to Sarah. His conviction is still awaiting a final trial, but for the time being, everything seems to indicate that this shady dentist doesn't show any signs of remorse. Unfortunately, this is nothing unusual. In fact, the following case will show you the true face of evil. Number 2. There are a few criminal profiles like that of Bert Franklin, a dentist who could easily have been associated with an extortion ring. The case of this mysterious subject is full of violence and conspiracies that came from jealousy and a strong need to control the life of his lover, Lincoln Lewis. The two met in 2016, and for a couple of years, they maintained an affair even though Franklin was married with 4 children. However, everything turned dark when Lincoln's son passed away due to a series of skull fractures. The child was only 19 months old. The police tried to dig into what happened, but didn't find enough evidence to incriminate Bert Franklin, a man who used to frequent his lover's house and seemed to display aggressive behaviors. However, in 2018, footage taken by a home surveillance camera proved the inevitable. In the footage, Franklin is seen kicking Lincoln before hitting his son in the head. Franklin's defense claimed that the blows had been aimed at the dog, the household pet, but this wasn't enough and only managed to worsen his sentence. His story captured the attention of thousands of people, which continues to be talked about even today, although none of them can compare with the bloody dentist. one of the darkest causes in history and whose protagonist will make you rethink your next visit to the doctor. Number 1. Few killers have reached a level of insanity like the Nova Scotia dentist named Gabriel Wardman, a man who caused one of the bloodiest killings in Canadian history during the month of April 2020. Wardman was dressed as a Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer and used a replica police car to transport himself to Portopike, where he pulled out a gun and shot 22 people. That was just the beginning. His advance led him to set fire to nearly 16 locations across the province until, after traveling more than 100 kilometers, he committed suicide at a gas station outside Halifax. To date, no one has been able to decipher what drove this dentist to commit such an atrocity, nor is there any evidence to suggest that it was a terrorist act or a specific ethnic or racial-driven attack. The victims were chosen randomly, and the incident has become one of the most chilling events in Canada in recent decades. Of course, the deranged nature of such individuals remains a real mystery. Throughout history, there have been an infinite number of cases like this one, although there are some that continue to stand out despite the advance of time. These are serial killers that many don't know, but whose stories will help you discover that the world is a place full of monsters and that your neighbor, your mechanic, or even your dentist may be one of them. If you're willing to continue learning about other similar stories, you'd better join us in the following video so you can see for yourself the real meaning of horror.